Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to talk to you about a First Amendment auditor who recently showed up on my radar after he decided to show up at someone's house to harass them.
Bye, cop caller. Bye, you're a coward, and everybody knows you're
Bye, buddy.
Wah! He's afraid of a camera. Bye.
That is
Little
K4,
girl.
yeah.
Tell the cops I said you were a little girl.
This resonated with me because I recently had a protection order approved due to harassment against myself, but I wasn't going to make a video about all of this until I saw a video by Dummy Kruger in which the auditor was charged with interfering with police.
I issued you a misdemeanor citation for interfering with police authority.
I'm not taking that. I don't have to take that.
All right.
The link to that video is in this video's description, but I wanted to take a look at some of the other content this auditor has put out, and hopefully help him understand what he's getting wrong. So, to quote the subject of this video, Wolverine Transparency,
It is an honor and a privilege to come out here to introduce the facts that I am pulling up on the recap. It's December 20th, 2022 at approximately 4:06 p.m. and we are out recording in public, and we are going to see if everyone, especially government officials, police officers, anybody that is a public servant, will honor and respect my right to record in public as the blogger that I am, as the press that they always tell you to be,
Aha! Now this is something that I want to address. If Wolverine is gathering newsworthy content to distribute to an audience, he could absolutely be considered press. We also see Wolverine show a press badge here, and if he's only recording in public, a press badge actually isn't required. However, it isn't necessarily a bad idea. When I was covering protests in Seattle, I was challenged several times by people who thought I needed to have a press badge on a public sidewalk. I didn't, but I had one made because it made things easier. What is a bad idea is live streaming while driving. You see that? He's looking at the camera, not the road. Now that might be careless or negligent operation of a vehicle under Michigan law, which is the state that he is in. Regardless, Wolverine heads over to some commercial property he claims he has permission to be on in order to film police leaving that property, and tells an officer that the officer is trespassed from the property.
You know you're trespassed from this property, right?
Fun fact, you can issue a trespass against police all you want, but it is only legally a trespass in Michigan if a person is on the property without lawful authority. If police are investigating a criminal matter or engaging in legitimate police activities, they have lawful authority, and the list of reasons they could be on that property is not limited to those two things. So, this whole trespass thing almost certainly wouldn't apply here. However, we are presented with a new issue. Can that officer be on that sidewalk to run radar? Well, the property owner doesn't own that sidewalk, so the officer still isn't trespassing. However, it might fall under Michigan's prohibited parking statute. Let's take a look. A vehicle must not be parked except if necessary to avoid conflict with other traffic or in compliance with the law or the directions of a police officer or traffic control device in any of the following places, to include on a sidewalk. This is a bit of a silly argument, but I imagine that officer was only parking in compliance with his department's directions, and that's actually not a parked vehicle. That's a stopped vehicle, which may not be covered under the statute I've brought up. If this wouldn't be investigated as parking on a sidewalk, what about obstructing a crosswalk? No. Michigan law requires the crosswalk to be marked, which this isn't. Perhaps it could be considered interference with normal flow of vehicular, streetcar, or pedestrian traffic, except, again, no. That only applies to people without the lawful authority to interfere with the normal flow of traffic. And as Wolverine is making no attempt to cross that sidewalk, no interference is actually taking place, regardless of whether or not there is any lawful authority to obstruct it.
603 says you should have your oscillating lights running while you are in a duty that vehicle code, and you're not doing so.
What's that? More attempts to cite a statute. I believe he's referring to 257.603, which governs emergency vehicle exemptions to the Michigan Traffic Code. For example, if an officer has their lights and sirens on, they don't have to stop at stop signs, although they are expected to slow down as necessary for safety. And they can park in ways that would normally violate the traffic code, for example, in handicap spots or in fire lanes, although don't do that if you expect EMS or other members of the fire department to show up, because they get really mad about that. The only way this statute could apply to the situation is if the vehicle is responding to an emergency, which this officer isn't. So that officer must not be allowed to park there, right? He doesn't have the exemption. Well, he doesn't need the exemption if he isn't violating the law. If what he's doing is not already illegal, there is no exemption that is necessary for him to conduct the activity he's already conducting.
Officer Borg, why do you think you're above the law?
Okay. Some laws have exemptions written into them. Sometimes those exemptions apply to law enforcement. You can't be above a law that doesn't apply to you.
The property that he stands on is right here. He's not allowed to be on this property.
We covered this. He is allowed to be on that property.
I'm not anti-cop, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just anti-bad cop. I appreciate police officers that are out here for the right reasons.
Are you sure? Would you care to explain this then?
So what they've turned our hall of justice into a den of thieves.
I'm guessing, and this is just a theory, that Wolverine hates police because he was charged with armed robbery, assault with intent to do great bodily harm other than murder, unlawful driving away, and assault with a dangerous weapon in 1992. Now, to be fair, he pled guilty to assault with a deadly weapon and unlawful driving away, and the other two charges were dismissed. Another fun fact, at the time that I made this video, he still owed the court money for that. Getting back on track, Wolverine returns to his truck, which is parked on the grass here, and another officer pulls up. This time, we don't get to claim that the officer isn't on private property. So, is this a crime? Is it trespassing? No, because there's an infraction involved, and issuing the citation for it is legitimate law enforcement business.
I wrote you a ticket for parking on turf, okay?
I'm allowed to.
It's a
I
civil
got permission.
infraction.
I got permission.
Your vehicle cannot be parked on
Yes,
turf.
it can.
I tried to find an ordinance that would apply that was specifically about parking on turf or grass or a lawn, but I couldn't. The closest I found was this, but no reference to the actual ordinance other than a link to all of the ordinances. So, Wolverine could possibly fight this and win. Maybe he already has, I don't know. What I do know is that Wolverine is wrong when he says,
And you just violated my Fourth Amendment right.
but we'll come back to that. First, let's address this claim.
He violated my anonymity. And now he took off because he knows he's trespassed.
No. Again, trespassing only works if they don't have the lawful authority to be on that property. And violating your anonymity? What? I can't even wrap my head around the argument that that is supposed to be. Now here's a question. Wolverine claims he has permission to park on this property, but this property is being sold. So is it owned by the same person? Well, this is interesting. This parcel of land that the officer allegedly can't be on is owned by the Telegraph Land Company. This parcel of land is owned by Mike Sater, but the place where the officer and Wolverine are parked are not owned by either of them. In fact, it appears that land is owned by the city, so a trespass by this property's owner wouldn't apply to the officer, and permission to park wouldn't apply to Wolverine.
If that's all it took is for me to put up a sign that there's a speed trap and you no longer can make no money, that's showing that you have interest in and retaliating against somebody that is doing what they're doing, what they're legally allowed to do.
Oh, is that what you're doing? That's kind of funny. That's not what they cited you for. Also, didn't they show up to do the whole radar thing after you were parked there? Weird. I don't know. There are a lot of questions. Doesn't really matter. But hey, if we want to reduce the amount of money going to that department and we want to keep the road safe, we could always just imprison anyone who speeds instead of issuing a monetary fine as a punishment, right? Would that make you happy? Or perhaps you don't want speed limits enforced at all because then you could drive as fast as you wanted while unlawfully driving away.
So I will fight this in court.
Oh, please do. Yelling at an officer who is no longer there won't beat the citation for you.
Wait till he gets his tickets.
Almost as if he heard me, and gosh, I hope he does, because he could learn a thing or two. Wolverine decides to make some phone calls, apparently to the police department, to try to get the officer some tickets. Now, who's retaliating now? Wolverine. He goes on and on about setting up a fundraiser to hire an attorney to go after the department so that he can impeach testimony. But I'm not sure he knows what impeaching testimony means. Generally, if someone's testimony is unworthy of belief, for example, because their sight or vision of the incident was obstructed or there was a clear bias, it can be impeached. However, if there is an ordinance that prohibits parking on turf, I don't think a bias is going to change the fact that everybody can see Wolverine is parked on turf.
It goes to show you when people abuse their authority and think that they can do whatever they want, they can't.
An interesting statement from the guy who said,
I got permission to do anything I want to.
while parked on property not owned by the person he's claiming gave him permission. Speaking of interesting statements,
He opened my shit, violated my Fourth Amendment right again, because he could have sent that ticket to the house. You know what I'm saying? That's a violation of my Fourth Amendment right when I said I don't want to roll down a window.
That's almost certainly not correct, because the officer observed you actively violating an ordinance and opened your door to communicate to you because you refused to roll that window down to communicate with him. Of course, that assumes there is an ordinance that was violated. And am I wrong in thinking that it looks like you're unlocking your door for him there? As if you're trying to indicate to him that the door is unlocked so that he can open it? Were you trying to trick him into something? Oh, there are a lot of questions here. But one appears to be answered near the end of this video. What statute was Wolverine actually charged with? He repeatedly states 9906P, but when we look at the ticket, we can clearly see that he was charged with 257.6741. The text of the statute written on the citation is parking on turf/sidewalk. So here's my thought. Remember when we looked at the parcel map and saw that this property was owned by the city? My guess is that the turf is considered part of the sidewalk, and therefore 257.674 applies. If that's not correct, it should be an easy ticket to fight. However, based on his lack of knowledge of the law, I'm sure Wolverine will find a way to struggle with it. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like this video, feel free to hit that like button. If you dislike it, maybe you're coming from Wolverine Transparency's channel, feel free to hit that dislike. If you want more of this nonsense, there is a subscribe button as well. If you want some sweet, sweet merch, there's an Etsy in the description. If you want to see these scripts before they are made into videos, that is on my Patreon. And if you want access to videos before anybody else, or access to videos that nobody else gets, you can become a member and see all of that, when, of course, I have any. That's a whole different topic. But until the next time, folks, be good, stay safe.